or to keep myself to time, I'll be in big trouble. Catherine, welcome.
Good morning.
And the floor's yours.
Thank you. Biological sex exists. No human being in the existence of our species has ever changed sex. Yet this proposed bill pretends that a person can change sex. It erases the concept of sex in law. It deprioritises the importance of sex in our experience of being human. It is an extreme and bizarre position to enact something so profoundly untrue and ideological into legislation and policy, and if it is enacted, it will have consequences. Proponents of this bill present it as a polite legal fiction, but it undermines the fundamental concept of what it is to be human and replaces the material reality of living in a body sexed either male or female with the contentious and nebulous belief of gender identity, which is based on nothing more than an individual making a self-declaration about their subjective feelings or performance of regressive and culturally relative sex-based stereotypes. A legislature must have courage to consider what would happen with proposed legislation in the hands of the worst possible actor. This bill is open to exploitation by predatory and abusive men who seek access to victims, men who get off on transgressing women's boundaries, or men who think that by declaring they feel like a woman, it entitles them to instantaneous access to women's spaces and rights. It is woefully naive to think that this will never happen, because it has and it will. What purpose does it serve to upend centuries of developing safeguarding principles for women and children? And who will this benefit? Within a day of similar legislation being enacted in Victoria, Australia, a man was granted access to a women's homeless shelter and proceeded to intimidate and harass the women to the point where they took their chances back on the street. Or the AA women-only group for survivors of prostitution, whose only means of support was this group, and it was infiltrated by a man who got off on their stories of sexual trauma and abuse. Or the men with lactation fetishes who ring up the breastfeeding support hotline and the counsellors are forced to be sex props in their paraphilia because they can't hang up on them anymore. Or the psych ward nurse whose hospital's administrators were so concerned with making sure a male patient wasn't misgendered, they failed to disclose he had a history of violence and sexual abuse of women and put female patients and staff at serious risk by locking him in the women's ward. Or in Canada, where a man who raped a 3-month-old baby boy was put in a prison with mother-baby unit after receiving his state-funded breast augmentation. Or the sex predator males with HIV being put in California women's prisons, with one prisoner already presenting as pregnant, and the response of the prison is to hand out condoms. Or in Edinburgh, where a man lied about his sex on his job application and is now CEO of a network of rape crisis centres, who tells rape victims they are bigots and need to be re-educated when they request female-only support, so women stay away and get no help at all. Or the women and girls in Australia distressed about men joining their sports competitions, marking their territory in the change room, inflicting serious injury by playing very aggressively and thrashing the female competitors. So the women self-exclude, they forfeit and they withdraw. The numerous benefits of sport and female-only community, life-changing for some after sexual assault, domestic abuse or body image issues, are now lost to these women. Those who support this bill likely believe themselves to be kind, inclusive and progressive, but they are wrong. This bill is profoundly regressive, profoundly dangerous and profoundly misogynist, as it elevates the demands of men who want to declare a special identity over the right of women and children to sanctuary, safety and protection. It removes the right of women and children to say no, to say we do not consent to this, to have boundaries and to exclude men from spaces where they are vulnerable. New Zealand is a signatory to CEDAW, yet this bill is repugnant to the international obligations central to the Convention because it enshrines discrimination against women and girls, it enables abuse and harm by men, and it diminishes our ability to participate in public life. If this bill passes and New Zealand women and girls experience the actual harm that I've outlined here, intimidation, assault, rape, self-exclusion, loss of sanctuary, denial of opportunity, destruction of women-only spaces, then the New Zealand legislature cannot say they were not warned. They cannot say they did not foresee this. They cannot try to absolve themselves from responsibility for the harm that results. The blood of these women will be on their hands. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. I've got a very quick question for you. These men you talk about, will they find other ways of achieving the same ends of this, despite this bill? Wouldn't they be the same people that are going to cause trouble throughout society?
So why would we make it easier for them to access these spaces? Why would we hand them a free pass to exploit, to get access to these spaces? I mean, up until now, we haven't really had to delineate so clearly. When it's a woman's space, it's a biological female space. And if men tried to come in there, we were able to say no. There was a social contract where we could ask for help, we could ask for assistance to have them removed. But if now we are all supposed to pretend that a man coming into a space now has the ability to get in, as long as he declares he has a female gender identity, that right of women to be able to say no is removed. So why would we make it easier for them?
Thank you. I've got a very quick question, Deborah. You'll have to be quick because we're running out of time.
Two quick ones. Catherine, I can hear the slight Australian accent, but it sounds like you've been here for a long time as well in New Zealand.
No, I am Australian. I have been following, I'm a practicing lawyer.
You're an Australian citizen on commenting. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
That's fine. The other one is that you have made a whole lot of arguments about trans women accessing women's spaces in order to perpetrate harm.
Yes.
Do I take it then that it would be acceptable for this bill to go through in respect of trans men? I mean, why would we limit their rights?
Well, I don't think anyone should be able to change their cardinal identification document, but trans men do not pose the same risk to natal males. You know, just because a male declares a special identity and then says that he's a trans woman.
So in that case, so I get that point. It would be okay then for this bill to go through in respect of trans men.
Well, look, I don't think that people should be able to change their cardinal documents, but these trans men do not pose the same risk to men that trans women pose to women just by the virtue of them being males. I'm not saying that all trans women are predators, by no means, but they are biological males. And the biggest risk to women and children is biological males, and declaring a trans identity doesn't change that.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. A very strong submission. Most of the submissions we've heard today have been pretty strong.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you for coming. And our next submitter is Peter Moore.